at this time. And then the next slide, the outcome selection, it's not showing up either. But what we do is we list off the indicators that go into each outcome, the criteria and notes that go behind it, just so they know, what kind of outcomes and programs we're looking at funding. We list off the target populations, and we do ask maybe one or two screening questions. The one in front of me was a youth development outcome, so we just want to make sure that the agencies applying are for youth ages 7 through 20, that's the target population. And we simply ask a yes, no, are you interested in applying for this outcome at this time? And for our process, it's a rolling application. So each year we'll set aside a number of outcomes that are going to go out to bid. This year there's 4 outcomes, just under $5 million, I think. And if you can go to the next slide, Don. So the benefits for us, and I guess this answers one of the earlier questions of why we're doing it online. It's nice to have, so it engages the agencies in eCImpact. What we're finding is we have this great resource, but other than when we ask for applications and at the end when we ask for outcome reports, it's hard to keep agencies engaged in the system. We don't really do agency visits, so the calendar does not get much utilization. So this is another way to kind of keep people engaged. Next, it's a central area. So even though we have 3 impact areas and we do some special RFPs, it makes sure that all the data is coming into one central location, and then I can pull it off, run reports. I download the data to access so we can do our tracking. And next, eCImpact, this component is pretty easy to program, so that's always a nice plus. And again, we really use it as a heads up for staff, so make sure that we're getting the word out. We can figure out pretty early on into the letter of intent process if there's gaps, if we're not getting the word out to all of the county, if there's different sectors that are missing the word, and it helps us with our communications. And then we do spend special emphasis, because we're a single county, we do want to make sure that there's a balance between the subregions in our county. King County is a fairly large county, and we're putting a lot of emphasis right now on racial equity. And next, it helps us, first and foremost, it really makes sure that we can set up our process. So the drawbacks, it's not at all a screening tool. We do run some RFPs where we'll ask for a 2-page letter of intent, and we really do use that to screen out anybody that doesn't look like a good applicant. This one, it's really just have agencies so they can tell us what they're interested in. And it does mean that we have some agencies that are clearly doing a stretch. They'll fill out a 7-page application, and they're really not a good fit, despite reading the impact plan, despite whatever guidance we can give them. So that's not beneficial to them or us. And then there are some technological issues. So right now when they log in, it's in the top left-hand corner, right under the agency name and programs, and it's title classification, so an easy enhancement that we'll request. And then there's no formal submission, so people who are used to the system, they get a little thrown off there because they simply select save. And the final thought, so we do use the system. It's been helpful for us to have a central location. I guess problems we've encountered at this time, we told agencies that if they give us a letter of intent by, I think it was November 20th, we would have them have their application ready by December 1st. And then we gave them the cautionary note, if you submit a letter of intent after that, we will load the application, but it may take 3 to 5 days. And what we found is there are people who, even on the last day, were calling up, hey, we'll submit a letter immediately. Can you give us an application? And so it ended up being a bit of a rolling deadline. very painful for a staff perspective. And we did receive notice, actually we've just been hearing from other United Ways about the Patriot Act, just giving a better heads up early on in the process. We spell it out in great detail during the contract, but just letting agencies know exactly what that entails up front. And then, of course, the other thing we're learning is, along with any other process, money's tight, so people do that stretch and apply for everything they can possibly get their hands on. So I'll stop right there if there's any questions.
Does anybody want to ask Damien a question now, or we'll go ahead and move on to Mary Beth, and then we'll have questions at the end? If you guys are ready, just raise your hand. I think we're going to, thank you very much, Damien, that was great. We really appreciate it. Next we have Mary Beth Lawler, and Mary Beth is a Valley of the Sun United Way, Chief IT Systems Analyst there. And I'm going to go ahead, and Mary Beth, you should be able to take it away.
Great. Can everyone hear me, hopefully?
Yep, I believe so. If anybody has any problems, please use the raise your hand or chat with me directly, and we'll help you with that. And I'll move the screens for you, Mary Beth.
Great. Thank you. So I'm with Valley of the Sun United Way in Phoenix, and Don had asked us to speak about the letter of intent process that we have. Don, if you move to the next screen. So basically our reasoning behind using the letter of intent process is we utilize the letter of intent for a particular fund that's very prescriptive in its eligibility. Basically, this fund is called Helping the Working Poor, and it's an actual individual income tax credit that the donations to this fund allows the giver to itemize those deductions and take the eligible tax credit when they do their taxes. So there's pretty prescriptive guidelines that we need to follow with the agencies that apply to this form. One, the Helping the Working Poor Fund, we have to do a legal notice out to the public in the newspaper that it is available and they can apply and fill out a letter of intent. To the Helping the Working Poor grants are for only 1 year. So every year it can change, and it's open to all programs and agencies out into the community. Programs funded for the grant period are, not necessarily are guaranteed continued funding in future years. So we really need to screen them and make sure that there's some program sustainability if we're only going to fund them for 1 year. Also, for this particular award, the award amounts range from $15,000 to $100,000. And the total allocation for this particular fund is typically about $850,000 for 14 programs. It's a smaller process compared to our larger process that, we're funding $19 million. So this is a smaller process, and that's why we use a letter of intent process for it. VSUW, we have a minimum funding threshold of $15,000, so that also applies to this fund. So funding requests under $15,000 wouldn't be considered. If they fill out a letter of intent and they're asking for something less, then we know, that we can't even consider them for that. This fund, if they do receive it, some projects do get